Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Thank you all for tuning in to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Evan Worley. So happy Tuesday to all of you out there. Today is the day. Finally, it seems like we've waited forever. Spring training started, then it crashed and burned. We went half of March, all of April, all of May, all of June, and seemingly all of July. No baseball, to having one of the craziest years we've seen in history. Only 60 games. Going into the postseason, new rules, expanded postseason play, surprise teams making the playoffs, teams that we didn't think making runs, the big bad teams going down early. We had some surprise teams come through, but after all of that, here we are. This episode will be out Tuesday, probably midday, so right before the World Series starts, this will be out, and we have finally got here. It is the Tampa Bay Rays. It is the Los Angeles Dodgers. One team has to break their streak of just World Series deprivation. The Dodgers haven't won since 1988. The Rays have never won in the history of the franchise. So one of those streaks is going down. But before we jump into all of that, I have to say a major RIP to the Braves postseason. It was the most fun I have ever had watching baseball. Just because I finally had a team win games. The fact that we have dropped 7 starting pitchers, and we had 3 starters this series as rookies who have never started a playoff game before. Bryce Wilson, of all people, who was giving up a walk per inning. He'd pitched 15 innings, given up 7 runs, so he was not lights out by any means, showing up and giving us a spectacular game 4. Going through Felix Hernandez dropping out, Cole Hamels dropping out, then opting in, then dropping out again. We had Mike Fultonewicz just completely lose what he had going for him. Sean Newcomb is trying to figure out what's wrong with him, so we lost him too. Traded for Tommy Malone at the deadline, got 1 start out of him, and he was done. Mike Soroka starting the year looking great, as he always does, only to tear his Achilles and be done for not only this year, but all of next year as well. To take all of that, every little bit of that, and ride into the postseason with Max Fried and Ian Anderson and make it this far, I was I don't have any complaints. We're all aware of what, Ronald Acuna Jr. can do, who we still have. He's 22 years old. We have him for 9 more years. Ozzy Albies is 23. We have him locked up for about 6 more years. We've won 3 straight NL East championships. We saw Austin Riley hit a game-winning 9th-inning homer in Game 1 of the ALCS, and he's only 23 years old. Austin Riley, by the way, you can't tell me that he does not look like a spitting image of Troy Glaus. Like, from the stance, just how he stands at the plate, his towering home run ability, his swing, the way that he plays third base. He is exactly who Troy Glaus is. Now, if we can shorten his swing a bit, like if we can just kind of, compress that down so he can, get to the fastball a little bit quicker. He has so much power that we can, if they're able to shorten his swing a bit and have him make a little bit more contact, we're looking at a 35 to 40 homer hitter. And then, we'll see how he can progress, attacking those off-speed pitches and, being able to fight off something low and away. But yeah, we have all of that. Travis d'Arnaud we have for another year. I really hope that we go in and re-sign Marcell Ozuna. Christian Pache came in, started playing for Adam Duvall when he hurt his oblique, and had so much confidence by the end of it. He looked like he was way in over his head to start the series. And then towards, the end of it, he had such confident ABs to the point where everybody wants to compare him to Andrew Jones. I'm not going to do that. But, he has some Andrew Jones in him. I can definitely say he has some Andrew Jones in him, especially with his defensive capabilities. If we can get his offense to come around and really get him confident, especially with, maybe an off-season training with just Albies and Acuna and hopefully Ozuna if he re-signs. I can't express enough how much I want him to re-sign. But, it just shows that the Braves could be the team of the future. I'm going to say could because, the Dodgers are loaded. They have been loaded. They will continue to be loaded. I'll get to once we close out the show with the free agent spotlight. We'll see what I feel like our free agent has a chance of going there because the Dodgers are known to just blow as much money as they can in free agency, so you can never count them out. But as of right now, with everything that's going on, like I honestly do believe that if we had an entirely healthy pitching staff with Mike Soroka, we would have won the World Series. But that's just the way the game goes. It is, Travis d'Arnaud was our hottest hitter against the Marlins. We go in, we start playing the Dodgers. He was one of our worst. We had little mistakes here and there. Nothing too over the top, nothing too crazy. But, the way that our pitching staff was able to throw. I mean, we threw Ian Anderson in Game 7, and he threw an amazing game. I think he only gave up 2 runs, and he went 17 2/3 consecutive scoreless innings in the postseason. Like that, the only pitchers in Braves postseason history with longer streaks was Lou Bernadette and Tom Glavine. Bernadette had 24 innings and Glavine had 18. So if Ian Anderson would have got one more out before he gave up that run, he would have tied Tom Glavine for second longest in Braves history as a rookie. It's absolutely insane. It's without Kyle Wright and without Ian Anderson, we definitely wouldn't have been able to make it. But it just shows how much depth that we have, because really, if you look at it, Anderson was like maybe like our eighth option going into this season, and then it's like, when you have, all those injuries and kind of forced our hand. Like I said, with, Soroka going down and Fulton Edwards being designated first time after his first start, you could really tell how much the 2019, the playoff game, Game 5 against the St. Louis Cardinals really, held him up, because, he pitched pretty well in 2018. I think he was an all-star technically in 2018, and then when he went to 2019, he had his major setback. He kind of pitched well. During the season, he had his moments he definitely had his ups and downs, but I'm not going to say he was like atrocious or anything when it came to him throwing. And then he goes to the postseason and he just laid 2 absolute stinkers in a row, and it kind of left a lot of Braves fans, including myself, with a real sour taste in our mouth. Like, I thought Mike Soroka should have got the ball in Game 5, or at least Max Fried or somebody, but then they threw Mike Fulton Edwards, and it just didn't go too well. I can tell that Sean Newcomb is really trying to get back, but he had really only 2+ pitches, and he was trying to develop a curveball and a changeup, and it wasn't really working too well for him, so they used him out of the bullpen in short term. It's a short-term innings eater, and it didn't really work. That it just didn't work out in the long run. So they sent him for assignment to try and get him ready to be a starter again in 2021. So at least us Braves fans, we have something. We have that to look forward to, especially if we're not able to get Felix Hernandez back. If Cole Hamels pretty much done for good, if we're not going to be able to get Trevor Bauer this free agency, because, nobody on planet Earth knows where he's going. Like, you can make all the guesses in the world, but, like, I'm sure Trevor Bauer has no idea where he's going to be going. And, he's only been a free agent for less than a month, so I can't really be like, I can't really be surprised that he doesn't know where he's going to be going yet. But still, like, normally a lot of teams or a lot of players have, like, ideas to where they want to go. And I know for a fact that Trevor Bauer has no idea where he wants to go. Let's look forward to the 2021 season. So, there are reports saying that Mike Soroka will most likely be back. I don't believe it. I'm not even going to think about it. So I'm taking him off, the list of potential starters that we'll have. Right now, our rotation will include Max Fried, Anderson, Wright, Bryce Wilson. They have Soroka listed, but like I said, no chance. They did a very good job at attacking, attacking the biggest need in free agency last year. Last year, our bullpen was really just Luke Jackson. Luke Jackson. He was every little bit of our bullpen last year, and he wasn't even a part of our bullpen this year because we upgraded it so much that we didn't even have space for him. So the Braves have done a very good job the past few years really, really attacking their weaknesses on the free agent market, and I think that's something that they will definitely do this year. Alex Anthopoulos, he saved a bunch of money with the Ozzy Albies and Ronald Acuna contracts. Dansby Swanson's probably going to want to be paid soon. I don't know what his contract status is. I know we have him for a few more years before he gets, before he's able to be a designated free agent or an unrestricted free agent. Sorry. But yeah, look out for the Braves. I want to say look out for the Braves in the future. I don't want to get too cocky because I thought we were going to win this series for one day, and it blew up directly in our faces. Well, my face at least. Because that's just how the game works. Especially when it comes to my favorite teams. When it comes to my favorite teams, my teams never win. Sorry. If you're a Braves fan, if you're a Philadelphia 76er fan, my teams never, ever win. Ever. I became a fan of the Miami Hurricanes college football team the day of the Ohio State National Championship game where they called that phantom pass interference play and they ended up losing that national title game to Jim Tressel, Craig Krenzel, and the Ohio State Buckeyes. So I might just be the kiss of death. So sorry, everybody. Also, Braves Nation, I fully expect our left fielder next year to be Drew Waters. Especially after the performance that Nick Markakis gave, the fact that Christian Pache came up and was a seamless transition, and he drew a couple walks, he hit that homer and got all of his swagger that he needed. I fully expect our outfield to look with a platoon of Drew Waters and Christian Pache and Austin Riley. I would say those three. Two of those three will play every single day, and then on the other side you have Ronald Acuna Jr. So be excited for that. All right, everybody. I'm going to be taking my first break, and I will be right back to list off the only series of the past 20 years. I'm going to say since I've been alive, so 25 years. Past 25 years that we've seen a team come back from 3-1. It happens very rarely, but it has happened in the past. I'm going to be going over those series, but I will be doing that right after this break.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
So, let's talk about some series in the past that have came back from a 3-1 deficit. And, I'm doing this. It happened a lot more than I remember. I always thought that it was kind of a rarity for it to happen, and I guess it really is, but it happens a lot more frequently than I ever thought it would. So I just went back 25 years because, if it happened before I was alive, then, it's pretty much outdated. Not to be, conceited or anything like that, but it just kind of is. And it's happened enough over the period of my lifetime to where, I remember a lot of these series. Well, actually, I remember all of these series besides just one. I was a big fan watching all of these. It happened against the Braves, I think a couple times. Or no, just once. But we're going to start off when it happened for the Braves. So we're going to go back to the 1996 NLCS. The Braves came back from a 3-1 deficit against the Cardinals. Now, everybody knows that the 1990s Braves run was one of the most dominant of any team. They just absolutely killed the league. Somehow, they only ended up with one championship out of it. In 1991, they went to the World Series. They lost. They went to the World Series, I think, 2 more times in the 90s. Lost both times. or no, they lost once, and then they won in 1995 thanks to the great Chipper Jones. Shout out him, one of my favorites. You had Chipper Jones, Maddox, Glavine, Smoltz, the three-headed monster right there. They had their NL East championship run where they won it like 15 years in a row and still somehow only had one World Series championship to show for it. I don't know how that even works. Like, I honestly, like, you have to be so... I'm glad I wasn't, like, alive back then to go through that with the Braves. Like, I caught on to them when they were at the tail end of that. I think I became a real big fan of them in, like, 2003, 2004-ish. And, so I caught the tail end of that run, and I was with them when they were, kind of bad. But, but back to that series in 96. St. Louis somehow got through to beat Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine to win 3 of the first 4, but the Braves were able to turn it around. Obviously, they brought the three-headed monster back for the 3 games. They had Smoltz, Maddux, and Glavine. They all returned to form, and they completely bashed St. Louis pitching, and they outscored the Cardinals 32-1 over their last 3 victories. So I don't know what switch was flipped between those guys, but 32-1 over their next 3 games. I wish we could have done that. I really, really wish we could have done that in this series. That would have been so sick. But, I mean, I guess hopefully it'll happen again in the future. Here's the first series that I really remember watching. I was locked in on this series. I don't know what it was about it, but I was so in it. I think it was because my mom was a Sammy Sosa fan at the time. But it is the 2003 NLCS Marlins over the Cubs. So everybody remembers this series. It is the infamous Steve Bartman series. There was the play where Bartman, was he reached for the ball and kind of took it out of Moises Alou's hands, or his glove, which is a total conspiracy because, Alou has been, reported multiple times saying that he could have caught the ball if Bartman wasn't there, but he's also said multiple times that he never would have got the ball even if Bartman wasn't there and it was somebody else. Like, to be fair, like, Cubs fans ruined this guy's life, and, like, he just did what every normal person would have done. You're in the NLCS, it's a once-in-a-lifetime chance, really, to get a foul ball hit directly to you, especially in that situation, and in that spot, too. Like, I get it's right next to the field, but a lot of the times players who are sitting there or I would say spectators sitting there, they're trying not to get absolutely bashed by a left fielder running in, diving into the stands. Like, that was at a spot, we had, I think it was a few years before that, we had the Jeter fly into the stands type thing. I get that was a ball in fair play, but it's like that stuff happens all the time. And, very rarely have you ever been in a position to where you're going to get a fly ball there, especially in Game 7 of the NLCS. Or it was either, I forget it was Game 6 or Game 7. It was Game 6. That's, okay, right here it says. Okay. So in Game 6, and they still had another game. They still had another game left, and they blew it. And they put it all on Steve Bartman. That was horrible, but I just remember so much from that series. I remember Josh Beckett was the man. I think A.J. Burnett was on that team also. They had a rookie, Miguel Cabrera, obviously. Pudge Rodriguez was the man. He had just came off that play at the plate where he got ran into by J.T. Snow and was screaming at the ball, and it was just so amazing to watch. That was such a great series. Mark Pryor, Kerry Wood. Man, that brings back a lot of memories. And then here is the most famous of those series, the 2004 ALCS Red Sox over the Yankees. I mean, everybody remembers the series. It's been talked about, so on and so forth. You know, the Dodgers manager, Dave Roberts, you know, he had the clutch steal in Game 4. David Ortiz had the walk-off homer right after. David Ortiz also had a 14-inning walk-off. You know, it was just... That was wild to watch. That was just absolutely insane. You had Curt Schilling's bloody sock in Game 6 in Yankee Stadium, which, you know, he became the absolute hero of Boston during that time. You know, it was just... It was such a ragtag group, too. Like, it wasn't a baseball team that you looked at and was like, oh, these are going to be world beaters. These guys are champs. It was like... You know, I think they had Pedro. You know, they had Curt Schilling. Obviously, you know, they had there's another pitcher that I'm missing that was on that Red Sox team. But you know, it was just like Jason Varitek. Johnny Damon wasn't like that great. He wasn't bad, but he wasn't great. Trot Nixon. You had Bill Miller, Pokey Reese. I think they had Orlando Cabrera. I think Orlando Cabrera was their shortstop right after they just got rid of Nomar Garciaparra, which I always thought was weird. I didn't think that, you know, you could get rid of Nomar and then just immediately get better, but they did. You know, and then they had Kevin Millar. Kevin Millar is the man, by the way. Really wish I could have seen him when he played that independent league game in St. Paul. But, yeah, they had him. They had David Ortiz, obviously, Manny Ramirez, Jason Varitek calling games. Who was there? Keith Folk was their closer. And I did not think Keith Folk was the man. There was just so many things that, you know, they had on their side in that series. And it was just, you know, they were way overmatched by the Yankees. And somehow they were able to just flip a switch and get it done. I remember Bronson Arroyo had cornrows, too. Like, out of all people, like Bronson Arroyo with his tall giraffe look, and he just had these cornrows, and I was sitting there thinking, I was like, well, that's strange, I guess. I don't know. That's kind of irrelevant. Moving on. This is the one series that I don't remember. I don't remember anything about this series at all, but it is the 2007 ALCS. The Red Sox beat the Indians. The Indians were up 3-1. And, you know, they had CC Sabathia out there for Game 1. They came out absolutely dominated, I guess. You know, Cleveland was riled up trying to get to their first World Series in a decade because they were, it would have been exactly the 10-year mark because they lost in 1997 on the Edgar Renteria single up the middle when he was with the Florida Marlins. In 97, they ended up walking off against the Cleveland Indians, as everybody remembers. But, you know, the Indians apparently played the All-American Rejects song "It Ends Tonight" on the loudspeakers before Game 5, and that was a huge mistake. Huge mistake. I guess Josh Beckett had 11 strikeouts to send it to Game 6. J.D. Drew with the Red Sox hit a grand slam. And then Red Sox employees played "It Ends Tonight" before Game 7. Ooh, yikes. That's not good. And right after that, Boston won 11-2 to go to the World Series. So they won their last two games by a combined total of 23-4 in Game 6 and Game 7. My God. That's why you don't get cocky. I got cocky after Game 3. No, after Game 4. Yeah, when the Braves went up 3-1. I got a little cocky. And boy, oh boy, did that bite me in the rump. That was not tight. So, note to self, note to all you guys out there, don't get cocky. Never, ever get cocky. Moving on, we have 3 more series left. We have 2012, the NLCS, the Giants beating the Cardinals. So I think this year was also the Giants were down 0-2 to the Cincinnati Reds in the wild card or in the divisional round and came back and won. So the Giants came back. They absolutely killed killed the Cardinals in those 3 games. They outscored St. Louis 20-1 over the final 3 games. They had Barry Zito come out and pitch in Game 5, and he threw all the way into the 8th inning. Ryan Vogelsong came out and, just struck out 9 in a really good Game 6. And then, the NLCS MVP Marco Scutaro, shout out him, major throwback. He had 3 hits in the finale in Game 7, and to seal the franchise's first ever win in a winner-take-all Game 7 game. You would think with all the history of San Francisco Giants baseball, you think they would have won a winner-take-all game before. Especially since they took the history of the New York Giants with them, obviously. So they had, obviously they have Willie Mays, Willie McCovey. There are so many big names, and they've had so much history going into the post for, 80 years up until that point, 90 years up until that point, and they still had never won a winner-take-all Game 7. That is kind of crazy. I would say the most famous one of all of these series, well, not the most famous one. I said that was the 2004 Red Sox Yankees. I'll say second most famous. It was the Cleveland Indians. They lost again, but it was the Chicago Cubs in the 2016 World Series. So that was just a weird year. 2016 was such a strange year because Cleveland came back from a 3-1 deficit in the NBA Finals, but lost the 3-1 deficit in the World Series. It was nuts. You couldn't make this stuff up. But I just remember I was at work that day. I came home. I got home at midnight, and I didn't want to hear all the rumblings of Game 7 and who won. So I turned on the game. I was up till 4:35 in the morning that night, and it could not have been more worth it. That was such an incredible game. Probably besides the Dodgers-Astros, I would say I think it was Game 5. Dodgers-Astros Game 5 was probably the most exciting baseball game I had ever watched. But besides that, 2016 World Series Game 7 was the most exciting game I had ever seen in my entire life. In Game 5, you had Addison Russell's grand slam. It was Game 6. Addison Russell hit the grand slam, sent the series into Game 7. And then you had Grandpa Rossi hit the homer to center. You had Rajai Davis, just the most dramatic 2-run laser of a homer off of Aroldis Chapman. And then the rain delay. There was a rain delay with it also that just came out of nowhere. You had Ben Zobrist in the 10th inning hitting the double down the line, and Mike Montgomery closed it out. Chris Bryant slips. The fact that Chris Bryant was able to make that throw while his foot slipped due to the rain, if he would have sailed that ball and the Chicago Cubs lose that World Series, could you imagine what would have happened to the city of Chicago and all the Cubs fans? Because if you watch, his foot goes, and anybody who has played sports knows the second your foot goes, you have no idea where that ball's going. And Chris Bryant somehow, with his foot slipping, was able to just throw a dime directly to Anthony Rizzo to end the game. And the most insane curse of the Billy Goat is finally over. The fact that someone was able to just bring a goat and said, well, you're never winning again. And it actually worked for over 100 years. Over 100 years. Because a dude couldn't bring a goat to a baseball game is arguably one of the funniest things that you could ever hear in your life. I really wish that I had that kind of power, to where if someone didn't let me in, I could just be like, well, you're cursed. You're never doing well again. That would be so tight. So tight. And then, obviously, we just saw the last one. It was the 2020 NLCS. Dodgers beat the Braves. It all centered around Mookie Betts on this one. I really do believe it centered all around Mookie Betts. You know, Will Smith bashed the homer in Game 5. It's fine, whatever. But, you know, I think it was Game 6. We had we had some momentum, and it was that Mookie Betts just catch on top of his toes and, you know, picking off Marcell Ozuna. You know, he robbed a couple homers. Cody Bellinger robbed a homer. You know, just little mental mistakes on the base pass that we saw in Game 7 with the double up with Dansby and Austin Riley when we had nobody out. Second and third, nobody out. We couldn't score because of a little mental mistake. And it was just, you know, it killed us in the end. Walker Buehler came out and had an incredible game. You know, we had everybody up at the right time. You know, we had Ozzy Albies hitting from the right side against Julio Urias. Couldn't do it. Dansby couldn't do it. Austin Riley against a lefty who we've bashed throughout the whole playoffs, throughout the whole series. Left-handed pitchers had done horrible against the Braves, and we just couldn't do it. So, props to the Dodgers. Props to all these teams that ended up coming back and winning. That is no small feat. But all right, everybody, I will be taking my second break, and when I come back, I'm going to give you the reasons why I feel the Tampa Bay Rays will be hosting that piece of metal in about 1 week's time. But I will be right back after this break.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Alright, everybody, we are back. So, let's go over some reasons why I believe that the Tampa Bay Rays will be your 2020 World Series champions. So, the reason why I believe that they're going to be champions, well, the first reason is their starting pitchers, obviously, are rested, and we know that they are the best. It is what it is. Like, they invested in the concept of the opener in 2018, where, you know, as we all have come to realize, you know, it's when a reliever will start the game for a few hitters and then bring in, you know, your traditional starter, you know, allowing them to face, you know, the heart of the lineup one less time than they normally would, right? So they used the opener 7 times in 2020, including 4 times in their last 13 regular season games, and they went 6-1. 6-1 in games that are started by an opener. So that just shows how good their relievers are. The fact that they can open up a game with a reliever and come in and just dominate. Like, that's something that no team should be able to take lightly. And, you know, having a bullpen that is that good and pairing it with a pitching rotation consisting of Blake Snell, Charlie Morton, Tyler Glasnow, and Ryan Yarbrough is disgusting. That's absolutely disgusting. To the point where you have those 4 guys starting your games. They could all, like, let's be honest. They could, every single one of them could take a game into the 8th inning. Every single one of them. And then they run about 8 deep in the bullpen. You're thinking about, okay, we're running about 8 deep in the bullpen, 7 deep in the bullpen. I'll go with 7. That's, like, you don't even need 3 of your pitchers because you can just go 8, throw in 1 with the 3-hitter rule in the 9th, boom, you're done. Now, obviously, that's not going to happen. I'm not so naive to think that the Dodgers are going to just get completely ousted because, you know, that's just not how it's going to work. One of these guys is going to slip up and have a bad game, or, you know, one of them is just going to, you know, run out and have himself like a 4 or 5 inning game. But, you know, with their starting pitching the way that it is, there's another thing. There are off days. This series. So it's going 2 games, then an off day, then 3 games, then an off day. It's going to be like a normal World Series. It's not going to be the 7 games in 7 days like it was in the LCS. So you're going to get even more rest on top of that. And then you pair that with the fact that, you know, the Dodgers, let's go through, you know, let's go through the motions on, like, who they're going to throw. So, I think it's Tyler Glasnow gets the ball in game 1. And if Tyler Glasnow goes, I think it would be Clayton Kershaw would get the ball because Walker Buehler got a game 6. So I think it would be, okay, so Tyler Glasnow versus Clayton Kershaw. This may be a hot take. I'm taking Tyler Glasnow in that game 100 times out of 100. I think Clayton Kershaw is the man. He's one of the best pitchers of all time, I feel. He is the best pitcher of the past decade. That is there's no argument to be made. But there's something about the postseason where I think he gets a little bit mishandled. He gets a bad rep for sure because he doesn't get, you know, he's been the recipient of a lot of Grady Little mess-ups. You know, Grady Little left Pedro Martinez in 2003, and it came back to bite him against the Yankees, which, you know, ultimately led to Aaron Boone's Game 7 walk-off. You know, it's, you know, he's been the recipient of those a couple times, and so I don't give him the rap like that, but I do think that, you know, if I had to choose who would take that game, I would pick the Rays. Now, you're expecting, okay, Game 6, you know, you had Game 6, so you had 7 off day, Tuesday, so that's a full 3 days rest before you go again. I have a feeling they're going to go with Walker Buehler because they went with Derek May twice in 2 days. Then they went with Tony Gonsolin in Game 7 as well. So I'm thinking Walker Buehler is going to be on there a 3 days rest. And if I'm not mistaken, it was Charlie Morton on the mound. That is going to be the game that the Dodgers, I feel, can take. I feel like they can take that game. Charlie Morton versus Walker Buehler on 3 days. I feel like that's pretty equivalent. We'll see. Charlie Morton is a lot better than, you know, a lot better than I can say, than I could ever be, than I can even, I think I am underrating him like over the top. But still, I think that I have that much respect for Walker Buehler that I think him on 3 days, Charlie Morton on 5, I feel like they're pretty comparable. But then it goes back to, are they throwing Tony Gonsolin? Are they doing bullpen days? And if you're doing bullpen days against Blake Snell, it's not, you know, it's probably not going to be in your favor. You're doing bullpen days against Ryan Yarbrough, it's not going to be in your favor. And let's move on to number 2 on that list. They have the MLB's best bullpen, and it's the deepest bullpen. You know, they got Peter Fairbanks, they got Nick Anderson, Diego Castillo, John Curtis, Josh Fleming, Aaron Loop, and Ryan Thompson. You know, they have styles that, you know, that can attack you from velocity. Like Fairbanks, Castillo, and Curtis could just dominate you with 100-mile-per-hour heaters. If you want to go spin rate, you want the spin rate to kind of throw them off and attack them that way. You have Josh Fleming and Aaron Loop. If you want movement, you have Anderson. You have a weird sidearm delivery from Brian Thompson. Like, there are so many different ways you can take this bullpen and just absolutely attack the Dodgers lineup. Now, the Dodgers lineup is deep too. They have 1 through 9 that could score and can produce runs and, put the ball in play and make things happen. But I think with this, they were struggling pretty hard against the Atlanta Braves. And trust me, the Tampa Bay Rays have a better bullpen than the Dodgers do. I mean the Braves, than the Braves do. I don't think they stand a chance, to be completely honest with you. Moving on, we have their defense is incredible. Like, their defense is, like, I love Kevin Kiermaier. I think Kevin Kiermaier is probably one of the more underrated players in the entire game. Like, you have Joey Wendell at third base. You have Willie Adames, I think, is underrated. Hunter Renfroe. Those are all Gold Glove caliber defenders. It gets taken for granted because of how good their pitching is, but their pitching is great because at the very few times their teams are able to put the ball in play, their defense is there behind them to just absolutely take over. There's very little mistakes made by the Tampa Bay Rays, to the point where you can look at it and be like, you can really look at the game and say, like, man, I don't really see flaws. Like, the one thing that the Astros were able to do better is they were able to battle in counts, and they were able to get a few pitches to drive the ball out of the ballpark, but they got a few mistakes and they took advantage of those very few mistakes to the utmost caliber that they could. They couldn't, if they missed one of those, the game's over. And we saw that in Game 7. They couldn't take advantage of it. But also it was because, their pitching shut down Tampa's hitting. Tampa has been kind of, they're not the best offense in the world. They didn't make it here because of their offense. They made it here definitely because of their pitching and their defensive capabilities. But, it shows, like, how good they really are, that they can make it to the World Series without having a real good offense. Like, let's call a spade here. Their offense is, besides Arozarena, which, trust me, we will get to, they're not that great. They're really not. They had Brandon Lau hit a homer. They had a few good at-bats. G-Man Choi has been incredible this postseason. I think he's been really, really good. Mike Zunino is supposed to be a big bat. He hasn't really done a ton. Their outfield is, without Kevin Kiermaier, being able to swing the bat the last few days. It's just what did they really bring to the table offensively? Not much, and they made it to the World Series. So if something's able to wake up in those bats and they're able to score even 5 runs, like if they put up 5 runs in a game, I don't think the Dodgers will win. Now, if they're able to put up 5 runs per game, I don't think the Dodgers win more than 1. I could say the Dodgers could get to like Blake Snell or Yarbrough, but I don't think that they would actually, get past any, I don't think that they would get to Morton or Tyler Glasnow, to be fair. And let's move on to the, quote, greatest player on the planet. We saw this last year with the Washington Nationals. All you need to do is have 1 or 2 players in your offense get hot. And those 2 players last season who were incredibly hot, well, they had 3. They had Rendon also, but I would say the two hottest hitters on that team was Howie Kendrick and Juan Soto. Juan Soto being a 21-year-old. We saw it last year where one player and just how hot that he got. He's young, he's exciting, he brought a type of youthful energy to the team that could really get it done. And I feel like that was the Braves' downfall also, not to take this back to Atlanta, but, Ronald Acuna, when he was able to get on base and get doubles, he was really exciting, but his whole mindset the entire game was, how far can I hit this ball, instead of, where can I spray it? He was trying, like, more often than not, he was trying to kill the baseball, which killed the Braves in the end. Arozarena isn't trying to kill the baseball. He is just trying to hit hard line drives, and they're flying out of the park. And he's the reason why they are so successful. But we also saw with Atlanta how easily it can change. Travis d'Arnaud, one of the hottest hitters on the team in the NLDS, NLCS, didn't do a thing. Bat under 150, I think. Arozarena, he's hitting 450, between 425 and 500 in that NL or ALCS, and it could all change. It could change on a dime. The Dodgers, they have a good pitching coach. They can have a game plan coming in, and they have good pitchers that can execute that game plan. They've been there. They've been to the World Series. They've been cheated out of a couple, and the Dodgers, they're going to come out, they're going to have the game plan, and they're going to be like, all right, finally we have a World Series on an even game plan, on an even playing field. Like, we can't lose this, and they're going to come out with a great game plan, and I'm just curious on how Arozarena is going to adjust, because I would say they need Austin Meadows to come back and have a good series, a really good series. Brandon Lowe needs to step up. Willie Adames, it's just these kind of role guys paired with Arozarena and, maybe Mike Zunino, G-Man Choi. They're going to need about 4 guys to be very, very good to be able to create runs. And if they're able to do that, then boy howdy. Boy howdy. So, second to last. Reason 5, I think. The Rays were one of the most resilient teams in baseball all season. The Rays trailed in 40 of the 60 regular season games and had the best record in 1- and 2-run games. And they've also came from behind in 3 of their last 4 postseason games. They play hard the entire game. And I know that's kind of like basic because they're professionals that are paid to get, play hard the whole game. But a lot of players don't play hard all game. If you get them down, they write it off, and they're like, oh, better luck next game. These guys have a sense of urgency. They are not afraid of anything. They will come back, they will come at you, and they will get it done. And that's why I love this team. They play with confidence. The game is never over with them, and I feel like that results back to their pitching because they know that they're never really out of games. And all they got to do is wake up the bats, put the ball in play, and get it done. And I feel like, this is the team that can do it. This is the team that can absolutely get it done. And let's move on to the last bullet point, but it is a huge bullet point, and it goes back and ties all of this. Kevin Cash is an excellent manager. I didn't know how they were going to handle getting, not having Joe Madden and what was going to go on, but they got Kevin Cash, and Kevin Cash was like a smooth transition from Joe Madden. He never takes credit for any of this. Most fans won't even know who the coach is of the Tampa Bay Rays. And he should get all the credit. He handles the pitching well. He handles the lineup well. As soon as Arozarena got hot, he went up from like the 7th or 8th batter in the lineup all the way up to number 2. He is up at the top of the order. He is climbing with all these types, with all the confidence in the world. He's interchangeable with the players. He handles data really well. He's one of the most, he really trusts his relationships with the front office, and that's hard. You should do that, obviously, but not a lot of coaches do. A lot of coaches are stuck in the past of like, okay, I've been around the game for so long. I know how the game's supposed to be played. I don't need all these numbers from these like guys up in a box suite in a suit and tie. You know, there's some coaches that are like that, but he doesn't do that. He said they give him the numbers, he absorbs the numbers, and he puts them in play. And, you know, he's a incredibly smart baseball mind, and I just think he handles everything better than Dave Roberts does. I've met Dave Roberts. He's an angel. He's one of the nicest people I've ever met in my entire life. But his mishandling of pitching, especially in clutch moments, has not been great. Like, I'll tell you this, in a one-run game, when you have Ozzie Albies hitting from the right side of the plate, you should not have a left-handed pitcher in, and he kept them in instead of going to Kenley Jansen. I don't know. That's not a lot of trust in your main guy, your big closer, because as we saw, there were some right-handed pitchers, or there were some left-handed pitchers, golly, that, you know, got feasted on by Ozzie Albies from the right side of the plate. And you just left him in and just kind of suffer the consequences. If Ozzie would have connected with that 95-mile-per-hour fastball, middle, belt high, and tied that game up, you know, we'd be having an entirely different conversation. And I feel like a lot more of you guys would be on my side on this. And all right, everybody, I'm going to be taking my final break. And when we come back, I will be talking about our free agent spotlight. And it is recently bounced George Springer. One moment, everybody. I will be right back.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
All right, people, free agent spotlight. This is how we close out the show recently. So our free agent for the day is going to be George Springer. So George Springer, as we all know, he's going to be 30 years old, or 31 years old next season. This year, he started off a little slow, but he got stronger as the season went along. You know, he's been a 3-time All-Star. You know, he came in to a game, or he came into the playoffs batting .304. He had a .353 on base percentage and a .658 slugging for the month of September with 8 homers in 20 games. So, you know, he wasn't great defensively this year. You know, he wasn't anything, you know, over the top. It has been a rather tumultuous season. You don't really expect him to come in and just be the absolute world beater, especially after the crazy year that it's been with not only with, you know, for us, but also with him when the whole cheating scandal. But one thing, you know, he made the All-Star game the past 3 years, 17, 18, 19, and he also ranked 5th among outfielders in Fangraphs WAR between 16 and 19. He is an elite talent, as much as, you know, we don't want to hear that right now. And he is, you know, one of the best playoff performers we've had in the past few years. Because, you know, the Astros aren't the Astros without George Springer. He took the first, in games, it was either Game 6 or Game 7, he took the first pitch of the game out for a homer. Like, you don't get that kind of lethal type of offense from anywhere. You know, you're not just going to find that in your minor league system. It takes a lot to get that kind of, you know, that kind of just poise and, you know, just willingness to, you know, just live up to the moment. You're not going to find that. You know, the Astros, they're already off the hook for over $116 million to 7 players, I think. I think it says Yeah, the Astros are already on the hook for over $116 million paid to just 7 players in 21. Okay, so they're in a bit of a Boston Red Sox situation. So Houston will have to decide on if they want the extension for Carlos Correa this year, because he's going to be a free agent next year. And it's also wondering whether if they have enough financial flexibility to re-sign Springer. So they might have to choose. Astros outfielders Josh Reddick and Michael Brantley are also free agents this winter, so they might have to, either just go with Cole Tucker, maybe Yordan Alvarez, if he's able to play the outfield, if they're not able to re-sign Michael Brantley or Josh Reddick, because I have a feeling they're going to throw a lot of money at George Springer and keep him around. It's going to be a weird offseason for George Springer. I feel like he's going to be the one that is going to be the most unpredictable. I feel like, the position player is the most unpredictable. I really do think JT Realmuto is going to be in the East Coast somewhere. He's either going to play for, I think he's staying in Philadelphia or he's going to New York. And by New York, it could be either team. I don't think that he's definitely going to the Yankees. He could also go to the Mets. We'll see, obviously. But this one is a bit unpredictable because George Springer may go back to the Houston Astros. I think the Astros are going to, make him priority number one and bringing him back, especially just, how they've been able to perform in the postseason over and over again. But there are some other teams that I feel that, we'll see a lot of money getting, thrown at them. One of those teams is actually in the World Series. I feel like the Dodgers are going to go after George Springer and completely just flood their outfield with maximum contracts. They got Mookie Betts. They signed him to an incredible extension. Cody Bellinger has been an MVP. He's going to get, I don't know what his contract situation is, but if he hasn't already gotten massive contract, he's going to get the massive contract. George Springer, I feel like he's going to be a guy that they're going to want to plug in left field. I feel like they're going to throw a bunch of money at him and see if they can get Springer, Belly, and Mookie Betts in their outfield just to solidify it up. If they're not going after him, they're going after Lindor. I mean, they're planning after going on Lindor anyways. But, I feel like if they're able to get George Springer and then they find a way to keep Turner and that infield a lot, constructed the same way, I feel like, they'll find a way to win multiple championships. But, they got to figure out a way. I just don't see a world where the Dodgers don't throw money at George Springer. I don't. And I don't know where George Springer is actually from, but I feel like if the Dodgers offer him a contract, he will definitely listen, and especially with that kind of money, because, I mean, if he goes from the Astros to the Dodgers, he'll probably have 4 or 5 rings. Like, let's just be real. He'll probably have 4 or 5 rings by the time his career is over. Another team that I think will go after him, I know that the Los Angeles Angels will go after him. I don't think that it's a smart move, but I know for a fact they will, because they're just going to, they're bringing in a new general manager. He's going to want to make a big move, a big splash, and he's probably going to try and go after the biggest name on the market, which I know JT's probably the biggest name on the market right now, but with playoff success, I feel like they will go after George Springer. I don't know if he will sign there. I doubt he will sign there because it would be a major downgrade, but it is a total possibility. Another team that I think has a major chance of getting George Springer is also, coincidentally, another team in California, and it's not the Padres. I think the San Francisco Giants have a good chance of going after George Springer. Now, I know I said on the last episode when they went after Trevor Bauer that starting pitching is going to be their number one priority, and it should be. But I think that, they got close to the playoffs this year. We need to see if they're going to keep the same playoff format. I think they should. I like this playoff format. But if they keep it, they are going to go after some starters. they're going to try and bring up, some of their prospects, most likely. But who better to pair with Mike Yastrzemski than George Springer, a guy who they kind of have a similar game. I see a little bit of Springer in, Yastrzemski. Yastrzemski, he's an MVP candidate. He is. He was an MVP candidate this year. And, pairing him with another major outfielder with a big bat who can, get things started at the top of the lineup, it's not bad, man. It doesn't seem like that bad of a hookup. And plus, who wouldn't want to live in, I know it's the major thing, like who wouldn't want to live in California? But I mean, with the San Francisco Giants, like San Francisco is a beautiful town, but financially it's a bit worse because the taxes and all that kind of stuff, and then the fires and all that everything else that's going on in the state of California. But I mean, he could just play there and then live wherever he wants to, really. But we'll see how it goes. I think those 4 teams are the number, like, those are the top 4 that have a real chance of nabbing George Springer. I don't see anyone else really going after him that heavy. The Cardinals need some outfield help, but I don't see the Cardinals really going out and spending a ton of money. The Yankees, they always spend a ton of money, but I feel like they're going to be since they're looking at JT and Trevor Bauer, they're going to be looking elsewhere to kind of re-sign their own guys. The Mets, they could be going after him. If they don't get JT, they could be throwing mad money at George Springer. I feel like that could be a possibility. But I don't think it'll be executed that well, especially with the new ownership. He's just going to throw money everywhere, and I don't know if that's going to be the best deal. We'll find out. Who else do I think has a decent chance? The Phillies could have a decent chance if they don't get JT. I feel like there's like the same 10 teams that are going after JT and the same 10 teams that are going after Trevor Bauer, I think, are the same 10 teams that are going to be going after George Springer in this. But if he goes back to the Astros, I think it'll be cool if he goes back to the Astros just to keep that like hatred alive, where they're the villains, and they come out and they kind of have their own little, we have our mark in history with like a villain or whatever. But I think that the dark horse team that could come up and sneak him and really just get him out of Houston, even though it's a long shot, I do think that the San Francisco Giants have a good shot of being able to come in and rip George Springer out of Houston. And all right, everybody, that is going to be our show. I will be back on Friday with a brand new episode. Enjoy your week. Enjoy your families, and be sure to enjoy the World Series. It's going to be the last bit of baseball we're going to have for a very long time, so be sure to enjoy every bit of that. You can follow me on Instagram at EvanWorley23. You can follow me on, or you can play me in Tap Baseball if you're bored. I'm taking all challengers. My team strength is over 90,000. What's up? I need some real challengers. I don't think I've lost in a month. Come on, give me something. The nickname is EvanWorley23, and I would like to thank you all for listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask you all to please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review, because it really helps us out. And also, if you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you all, and have a great night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.